So you're a singer and musician who performs music by other artists. Does that give you a pass when it comes to concentrating on the lyrics that you sing? Well, absolutely not. And on this episode of Lyric Writing 101, that's exactly what we investigate with one of my favourite musicians. Stick around. Tribe of Names, welcome back to the channel. My name is Simon Godfrey and I'm a professional musician who has spent the past 35 years working in and sometimes around the recording music industry, writing and performing. On this channel we provide tips, tricks and gear reviews for all of you talented songwriters and performers out there in YouTube land. If you like what you see, please consider clicking on the thumbs up button and maybe subscribing and clicking on that notification bell as well so you can be informed of any new content we have coming out on the channel. So when it comes to covering other artists' material, it can sometimes be easy to just gloss over the meaning and sing the words as presented on the page for the crowd in front of you. But if you can go that extra step further and maybe try and understand what the artist who wrote that song meant when they were writing these words, you can often impart a lot more power and authenticity and obviously make yourself and your band sound a lot better on stage if you really know what the meaning is behind that song. If there's one artist that I've encountered on my travels over the years that most exemplifies that ability to understand the meaning of other artists' material, it's a gentleman called Joe Trainor, who is the musical director, lead singer and pianist of the Rock Orchestra, which is based down in Delaware, here on the east coast of the United States. And I was very lucky enough to get a few minutes with him a couple of weeks back to talk about how he approaches playing other people's material as if it was his own. So let's head on over to Zoom as I talk with Joe Trainor. So here we are, ladies and gentlemen. I am talking today with what I consider to be one of my musical brothers from another mother, which is a gentleman called Joe Trainor. And Joe is a musical director, a front man for many different bands over the years, and just an all-round musical force of nature, I'd like to think. And so yeah, we're coming down today. Sorry, before I go any further, hello, Joe.
Hello, Simon. How are you?
I'm well, thank you, and it's thanks very much for being on the video today. It's much
My pleasure.
appreciated. First off, just so people know a little bit of background about how we met up. I mean, one of the things I'll just explain is that the band that I was in at the time was playing a show at a place called the Kennett Flash in Kennett Square here in Pennsylvania, and we just happened to be put on the same bill as one another completely by random. And one of the things I will tell everybody at home is that normally when bands turn up, there's usually a bit of rivalry between the bands, and sort of like you look at one another and go, yeah, they're not very good, or oh my god, they're so much better than us. But I remember that when we saw you with your trio, and it was just piano, bass, and drums, and you singing. You just blew the doors off the place, and we were all became instant fans of what you could do. So, with regards to lyric writing, how did you first start out writing lyrics and writing music?
That's it's funny because in anticipation for this, I had to stop and think about how I went about writing lyrics, and I never really kind of thought much about it. You know, I think if you want to write songs, you sit at your instrument of choice and you start writing, and then words come out of you, and some of them are horrible, and some of them, if you're lucky, some of them can be brilliant. So I got thinking about my process and what songs I like and what songs I hate lyrically, and it kind of sent me down my own little rabbit hole of songwriting. And for me, I started writing. I probably wrote my first song when I was 14, when I knew like 8 chords on the piano, and they were horrible. They were horrible. However, the second song I ever wrote won me third place in a talent show at school. Okay, I'll take your $5. So, and I probably wrote 50 songs that were horrible like that, very cheesy, love things I'd never experienced. It wasn't until around 91, 92 that I started really writing for real. I think I was trying to challenge myself as a musician, as a composer. And I'm like 21 years old, so I'm figuring out as I go along, and then when I wrote some songs, I put a band together. I'm like, let's play these songs. And lyrically, I think I was definitely trying to ape my heroes. There was a lot of Peter Gabriel, Marillion, Genesis influence in the kind of stuff I was writing. While none of it sounded anything like them, but not really focusing on personal experience as much as just kind of probably a combination of story writing versus what's the word, where you're just kind of like throwing out lines esoterically, and if they sound good or they sound interesting, it doesn't matter if they mean anything. How they relate to each other doesn't matter, as long as it's creating an interesting soundscape for the listener to absorb. That's really all that matters.
It's the John Anderson methodology, isn't it?
Yeah, I still don't know what half those Yes songs are about, and I love them. It doesn't matter. Your high vibration can go on all day long, and I don't care. But really with Yes, it wasn't until Trevor Rabin joined the group, or maybe Trevor Horn, like with Drama, where lyrically it started to become more cohesive, probably more so with Trevor Rabin. Like I can wrap my mind around, I don't know, City of Love or Hearts or those songs much easier than I can The Ancients or even Gates of Delirium. And I know what those songs are about, but like the way John presents them, I find it fascinating, but never enough to try to recreate that or emulate that in any way.
It's interesting that you make mention of that because when I was speaking to my long-term co-writer Rob Ramsey, and we got onto the subject of John Anderson, he said that trying to get meaning out of John Anderson is like chasing it around a bush. He said you're trying to find this meaning, and all of a sudden a little bit of meaning will pop out, and you'll try and grab it, and it disappears back in again quicker than you can grab it. But um, with regards to what you've done as part of your career, one of the things which I think sets you apart from a lot of the other lyricists that I've spoken to on this channel is the fact that you work as a musical director for the Rock Orchestra down in Delaware, and I know you've put on some big tribute nights in theaters, and I think you have the Rock Orchestra play every single Beatles track that was recorded on every single album over 7 nights.
Mhm.
And I mean, I've been fortunate enough that you invited me and I was a small part of that, but it's an enormous undertaking, and you had a huge amount um, of material, both musically and lyrically, to pull under your belt and absorb. And I wanted to ask you how you approach um, singing someone else's lyrics and how that differs between singing your own lyrics.
Well, I think it's a mix of things. One thing that drove me to the Beatle Fest concept and doing all of their songs, especially in chronological order, is one of the things when mixtapes went the wayside and we could make our own CDs or stack up a playlist in MP3s. I liked listening to entire catalogs of an artist. I wanted to hear how they evolved as artists. I didn't care if it was Rush or Springsteen or the Beatles or whoever. And getting to do the Beatles, you can watch them grow, not just as lyricists, but as musicians and as just entities, right? So the cool thing with the Beatles, and it's actually easier with the Beatles, I think, than most, is because there's a lot of fantastic lyrics in the Beatles catalog, right? But there's a common thread that runs through the entire catalog, and that is this concept of love. So early on in their career, it's more of a tactile, I love you, you love me, I want to love her, she doesn't love me anymore. That very baseline sense of love between two people. And then it grows, it turns like in the 66, 67, it starts to become more about this love for everybody and love as a concept for the world to get behind. And I think that part of the reason why their music has endured is because lyrically they've always focused on these positive things. Now we know that John was cynical, and John written the most cynical lyrics in the Beatles catalog. But he also wrote "All You Need Is Love." Like he wrote some very straightforward, and he also wrote, "Give Peace a Chance." And he's, even when he was at his most cynical, he still had a part of him that was very focused on trying to bring the world together through this concept of love. Those lyrics are easy to sing because I think that we've all experienced that, and I feel like this kind of worldly love is something we'd all love to see happen. Other artists, it can be a trick to try to, because you want to get into their mindset. Sometimes you don't even think about it because their songs are so ingrained. I'm singing songs that are 40, 50 years old, and I've been listening to them my whole life. So when I sing Rosalita, I don't have to get into a state of mind with that. I know that song. It just rolls out of me. It doesn't matter whether it's Rosalita or Supper's Ready or A Day in the Life or whatever. Yeah, there are some songs that have deeper meaning for me, and what I find emotionally, because lyrics, the combination of the song and the lyric is what's going to drive you emotionally, right? And that emotion is what's going to drive your performance, right? So while some songs, maybe like That's All, not going to really, then it's up to you as an entertainer to try to make that entertaining for the audience, even if it's not bringing out a huge emotional statement within you. But there are some songs where the gravity of what you're doing propels that moment, right? Whether
Yeah.
I've been really lucky to get to sing Supper's Ready, get to sing Bohemian Rhapsody in front of an audience, or The Last Resort by the Eagles, which is just one of those amazing
Yeah.
songs that most people don't talk about, but it's epic and it's so beautifully constructed. And I found that to be more emotionally impactful on me as an artist than, say, singing a love song.
Yeah.
Pick one. Even though I might have a relative connection to the song, to a love song emotionally based on my own history, singing these other epic pieces, eh, I don't know. I felt like they had a more emotional impact on me.
This actually leads me round to something which I think is very interesting. Again, I think it's something which is quite unique to you in the fact that, if I remember correctly, and you'll probably have to fill out a little bit of background about this.
Okay.
You recently released an album under the project of March. I think the name was March,
March.
I really loved it. I thought it was an incredible album to listen to,
Thank you.
even more so by the fact that apparently, from what I hear, you recorded that entire album back in the 90s. Is that correct?
It's almost correct. Excuse me. We wrote and recorded those songs in the 90s and then realized the recordings weren't very good. So the idea was that when we wrote those songs, we had an 8-track quarter-inch reel-to-reel that we were recording demos to, and we had pretty good quality for 1991 in the basement, not 93 in the
Yeah.
basement. But the idea was always we were going to record these, so we had them, and then when we had the money to go into a studio with a band, we would re-record them in a more professional setting. And then it never happened. So during quarantine, while we all had this downtime, we'd also all upped our technology game. So we all had like dolls at home that we could record to and share information back and forth. So we re-recorded the album at the end of 2020 into 2021.
Okay.
So the recordings are new, the songs are old.
Got it. Okay. Well, in that case, can I ask you sort of like how difficult or indeed easy was it to sing lyrics to songs which you'd written, you know, 20 plus years ago now? And did it actually make you feel nostalgic for the time, or did you feel that and did they still have relevance for you?
Well, I mean, when we get into the meat of lyric writing, right? My lyric writing history is divided into two parts: the '90s and then everything after.
Okay.
And everything I was writing in the '90s was primarily, we'll just say, it's fictitious. So
Yeah.
either I was creating stories or these kind of open-ended ideology kind of things that worked for the song, trying to be profound, trying to be interesting, because I'm driven at this point by lyricists like Fish or Gabriel. And when you listen to those things, you're just like, I don't know what's going on there, but I'm down for it. Like, it sounds interesting, especially the Gabriel stuff, right? and until you dig in, then you realize there's substance in there, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think I ever hit the substance part of my songwriting back then. I think I was writing some interesting stuff, but very little of it had any kind of cohesiveness to it.
Yeah, you and me both there.
Right. So you come up with a concept. So the first song on the March album is a song called "On the Riverside," and it's basically a sequel to mentally, it's a sequel to Lives, Pain Lives on the Riverside. So it's like because I don't know what they're talking about in that song, but I take that idea and like, well, no, it's a prequel, not a sequel. So the moment they found whatever it is down at the Riverside, that's the story. We
Yeah.
don't know what it is, but it that's what it is. So none of that stuff had a real emotional impact on me in so much as it's not tied to an experience that I had or a person in my life or anything like that. So when it came time to re-record them, I think that I was heavy nostalgia.
Yeah.
I remember being in the studio singing these songs and thinking it's been 20 plus years since I've sung these songs and I never thought I'd get to sing them again. And that was really cool to be able to lay down these vocals and be like, I can't believe I'm singing these words because I sang them so much for like a decade and then didn't sing them for 20 more years. So yeah, it was very nostalgic. I'll also tell you that 22-year-old Joe's voice was a little higher than 50-year-old. So there was a little bit of that too, but no, but it was a lot of fun.
I was going to ask you, did you feel tempted to change any of the lyrics, or were you determined just to keep it exactly like as a document, a moment in time?
I changed two lyrics in one song, two lines, because I
Okay.
felt for reasons that I can't tell you at the time, back in 95 when it was written, they were almost directly lifted from Don McLean's American Pie, which is funny
Okay.
because they are not, the song doesn't sound like American Pie at all. But there were two lines that stuck out. And I think I was trying to take these two lines and put them in a new context in this new song, kind of use that imagery and tie some things in. But 25 years later, I'm like, it's too close. So let's go ahead and change these lines. So I went ahead and rewrote those two lines. Everything else exactly the same. We altered it with some harmonies and we added some cool things, but lyrically it's 98% intact. And the whole point of this was to kind of put these very specific things in better quality, in a better light.
Yeah.
So we didn't want to, and of course we did alter some things. We added more guitars or we did some cool. I had access to Mellotrons, so I started using Mellotrons on some things. So the technology helped us kind of explore some of the sonic space, but the intent, we had to make sure the intent
Yeah.
remained.
Yeah.
And I think we did a good job.
Would you have any advice that you think would be pertinent for people just starting out as a lyric writer today? Like anything like about the pitfalls or the things that you need to do or don't do. If you've got any advice for a newbie, what would that be?
On specifically the topic of lyric writing,
Yes.
be honest with yourself. Like there's that's the only thing that I can possibly say. And it took me years to realize that. You cannot write from a place of insincerity. Now, it doesn't mean you have to write nonfiction. It just means you have to commit to whatever you're writing, believe in it, and be honest with yourself that it's what you want to represent you as an
Yeah.
artist.
Yeah. Would you, before we sign off, be able to tell everybody where they can investigate your music there out on the World Wide Web?
No, I'm not prepared to answer that question because I don't have any of that stuff written down. Are the March albums available on Bandcamp? And all the lyric videos for the trio and for March are available on YouTube. You can listen to all of our stuff for free, or for the 3.0003 cents we get for every stream. Yeah.
Well, in that case, what I'll do is I'll put links to all of your music that's available down in the show notes below this video, so people can click on it. All that I can say is Joe, thank you very much for joining me. It's a big pleasure. I know that we've had you on the channel before because you were part of one of our studio sessions when we recorded Driving All Night, and I dare say we probably will have you back if you would like to come down and join us again at some point in the future.
I am waiting for the call.
Okay then. Well, thank you very much, Joe, and we'll speak to you later.
Sounds good.